Stefanos Sifandos is a relational alchemist, international speaker, and author who facilitates transformational growth through neuroempowerment practices and integration of spiritual tools in Western psychology to improve, evolve, and enhance the quality of relationships. His mission is to be a voice for the voiceless, to assist individuals in actualizing the fullness of their potential, and to relate consciously to each other with authentic love. Thank you so much for being here, Stefanos. Welcome to the Soul Collective podcast.
It's wonderful to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm so excited to really talk to you about conscious relationships, dating, monogamy, everything in between. So I just want to start by asking you first, what right now is setting your soul on fire?
Just life. I'm just waking up in the morning. I'm on my second day of I'm on my about to get on my third day of water fasting. So I feel pretty good, pretty enlightened, pretty alive right now, pretty on fire. Just life. The weather's beautiful. I serve in the way that I get to serve. I spend time with amazing people. I have beautiful relationships in my life. I'm just very grateful for that. And I'm really doing my best, very deliberately, to begin to focus on that. The mantra of Viktor Frankl, for example, of that, no matter what's happening outside of us, nothing can be taken from what's within us. That can't be taken from us. And so really, really just focusing on that and looking at that, no matter what's happening in my world, choosing to be a particular way. That doesn't mean not feeling my feelings or numbing myself or distracting, but choosing to respond as opposed to react. And that's very exciting for me right now. It's been there for a while, but I'm just amping the intensity, not the intensity, the deliberateness of that up.
Yeah, what a great theme and, topic to explore, especially as we were, talking about 2020 and just so much change that's taking place right now and a lot that's happening in the external world, right? With the pandemic, with, economic challenges and, the political season and things like that are happening. And, I love your point of saying, we have a choice of how we perceive the world around us and how we react to it, right? And especially in regards to relationships. So I definitely want to dive in a little bit deeper and explore. I'm so curious how you got started on this journey of really doing this work around conscious relationships.
I think like most of us, we move into those places that we need to learn the most. So we teach what we need to learn the most, and B, out of pain or despair in those areas. And so for me, my relationship to myself, my relationship to others, particularly, not so much my friendships, they were really solid. And they still are. And there was some, in some of those friendships, some of those core peer groups, there were some issues there, but really in my romantic partnerships, because those intimate romantic partnerships are extensions of our primary core relationships that we have when we were first born with our parents. And so I was really suffering, and I was choosing that. I was suffering because I was repeating my past and I was avoiding my pain, and I wasn't dealing with my fears and my trauma that I had experienced as a young child during my developmental years and during my teenage years and continued as a young adult. And so they were big pain points for me. And I faced those eventually. It took a while, a number of years ago now, but I faced those and really began to delve deep into what does it mean to be me? What does it mean to be a man? How do I want to show up in relationship? What does masculinity mean? What does femininity mean? How am I applying healthier aspects of these in my life? And where am I really unhealthy, extreme, or not sustainable in the way that I'm being in the world? And I really started connecting to what's my soul's purpose, what's my dharma, why am I here? And beyond even that, who am I? Just really, who am I? And so, it was really the work that I do today and the way that I serve and the way that I believe I'm really here for is to hold space for those that feel very stuck and feel very unable to move from without, to provide them with tools to be a reflection, a mirror, to grant them perspective, to really create a safe space. Because I never had that as a kid, and I had it in pockets, which was also very confusing. And so part of my attachment style is disorganized attachment style. It was very confusing for me. And so I learned that the consistency of showing up in a particular way really helps us feel safe. When we feel safe, we're able to explore the chasms of our being, the unknown parts, the mysterious parts, the scary parts, the quote unquote ugly parts. And in exploring these aspects of ourselves, we gain a greater sense of wholeness of who we are. And so I embarked on that journey, and I had amazing people, shamans, teachers, psychologists, counselors, coaches, spiritual guides, spiritual teachers that were able to help me and hold that space and create safety, that I could really release some of this stuff that was blocking me and holding me back in life. And so I just feel it's almost like my duty to be doing that for others. And I thoroughly feel it's in alignment with where I am.
Yeah, it's such important work. And I know for myself personally, I had a relationship pattern of emotional unavailability. And that really played out for quite a while until really more of like a cataclysmic event. And so I'm just wondering from your perspective, change is not always easy. So in your case of coming to do this work in the world, was it something that, really forced you to go within and look at these, styles of attachment?
Yeah, styles of attachment, my maladaptive coping strategies, the way I dealt with stress and difficulty, the way I projected or dealt with my dense feelings such as anger or jealousy or abrasiveness, which isn't so much a feeling, more of an expression, but how I really dealt with my fears. And often I just used distractions, alcohol, pornography, sex compulsion, sex addiction, prostitution, drugs at some points, workaholism, defining myself by status and who I am in the world in terms of my achievements and my wealth accumulation, like all of that. But coming from a place of, if I don't have that, I'm worthless. Therefore, I would move in desperation and fear, which is a constricted state, to attain that or experience that. I would morph myself. I would be manipulative in certain areas. I would be oppressive in certain areas towards myself and towards others, highly critical and judgmental. And so I had to look at all of these patterns and really unpack where they came from, not to relive the past, but to gain an understanding of these patterns, to heal the core wounds of these patterns, and then to choose a different pattern. I remember my wife and I were teaching one of our inner child workshops once. It was 3 months ago, and she used an amazing analogy, and it was, that thin gold chain that you have, and it's in your drawer somewhere, or it's in a box, and you pick it up, and it's just all tangled up. And no matter how hard you try, you start undoing the knots. It doesn't seem to work. But then you get that one knot, that one core knot, that main knot, that just all the other knots unravel, right? And it becomes effortless. Well, that's what our psycho-emotional being is like. If we don't address the core wounds that we have and carry in our world and in our being, everything else is just band-aid solution. And so I had to get to that, and that requires digging, excavating, and going deep. And that can be very painful because we come face to face with aspects of ourselves that society says are not good enough, are not healthy, are ugly. And we have to deal with that. And we have to be in this balance point of, am I in the in group? Am I in the out group? Am I loved? Am I not? How can I show love to myself? What does that even mean? And so I think, like many of us, myself included, have gone through various dark nights of the soul. But what we often do as people, and I've noticed this with the many that I work with and in my own life as well, we generally try and avoid that because it's so uncomfortable. So again, we distract, right? With whatever that distraction looks like. You choose your poison, or choose your
Yeah.
pain,
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's such a great point. And I think that we all have coping mechanisms, if we have those core wounds that haven't been addressed, and so I just want to say, like, on the other side of that, I think is so much growth and evolution when we're able to go into those dark places and look at it, but it can be so painful to get in there and really look at some of those shadows. So, what would you say for somebody that is having those resistance, but is seeing some of that play out in repetitive relationship trauma?
Yeah, I would first say, pull back from being in intimate and romantic partnership for a while, because if it's playing out, unless you're really in a partnership where you're very cognizant and aware of yourself and they are as well, and it's mutual and reciprocated, that you can both work on your stuff together. Now, that's not that you're going to heal that other person or they're going to heal you, but you provide a very deep mirror for each other. But you've both got to be willing to do that. And sometimes the pain is so intense and the patterns are so addictive and so familiar that it's difficult to actually get into that. So what happens is you experience intensity. There's this magnetism where you come together initially, and that really exists so that you can heal your stuff, right? And otherwise, you wouldn't really come together. But then that wears off. That limerence phase, the honeymoon period, the hormonal phase wears down, and then this more whole version of selves come through. And often it's like, well, I didn't sign up for that. That's not who you were. Why are you being like this now? And then we just break up and we just go repeat, different, same person, different haircut, same person, different face. And so maybe having some space and going into your own traumas, your own patterns, where you can do that without being distracted by partnership. That can be very useful for some people. In fact, for most people. Now, I'm a big advocate of conscious relationships, the sacred union, healing the planet and bringing a new life to the planet. But we have to do our individual work at some level first to reach that foundation level of being able to be resilient enough and compassionate enough to remain in a relationship when those big triggers come up, and to deal with them in a more mature way, not in the way that we've dealt with them in the past, which just keeps getting us the same result of the pain and fear cycles that we experience. And so doing that, being committed to our own inner work, and reaching that level, like I had to get to a level where I said, okay, I'm ready for a relationship now. Like I actually am really ready. And that was years. That was years. It's different for everyone, but that was years for me.
What were some signs that you noticed in yourself that you're like, okay, I'm really ready to call in, that type of partnership?
I didn't need to be in a relationship. I wasn't attached to that. I was happy to living the life that I was living, and I wasn't longing or yearning for a relationship, and I was open to it. It's a very different feeling. It was this, I'm all in, I'm really deep into this, and I'm not attached to an outcome. I didn't have that fear or anxiousness, that trepidation of, I need to be in a relationship, or the opposite, which I've oscillated between both. Is like, definitely no relationship for me. I'm not going there. My freedom's going to be taken away. Like this massive resistance against being in a relationship. And so for me, that point was, I'm really peaceful. I'm really good either way. I'm really content and connected either way. And that was a big sign for me.
Yeah, that is really a beautiful place to be in. Let's talk about dating a little bit. If you get to that place and you're like, I really want to attract a partner and I'm excited about entering into dating. Right now, just dating in general has such a different new dynamic and layer. But, for people out there that really want to call in a conscious relationship, what advice do you have?
Yeah, so we live in interesting times. I'm assuming this podcast will get released in the next at least few weeks. So we're still in 2020, I would say. And there's been a lot of fear around intimacy and connection and human touch and physical distancing, social distancing. And I'm not denying any existence of a virus. In fact, there are inconceivable amounts of viruses on our planet, in our bodies. And I mean that, inconceivable amounts. So I'm not denying that. And at some point we need to make a decision around, because we're relational beings. Human contact and intimacy is very important. And if we continue to come from excessive fear, we're going to feel restricted and we're going to shut down, because the parallel drawn is that becomes a habit and a pattern in every area of our lives. It becomes the norm to shut down and pull away and to shut ourselves off. And so at some point we have to make a decision to deal with the fear. It's a beautiful opportunity. Whatever's happening in your world, whatever's happening in the world, there's a crossover there, subjective, objective, what is, what isn't. We have to make a decision about how much am I going to allow this fear to control the life that I'm living, space that I'm occupying. So I think really dealing with our fears is important. Also getting creative. Like if there are some fears there, but you do want to, and I'm not talking about a new normal, because there's a connotation associated with that. What I'm speaking to is being creative and adaptive. And so what does dating look like? So when I met my wife, we spent 3 months, because I was in Australia and she was in the US in California. I was in Perth, Western Australia, and we spent 3 months getting to know each other, knowing that we were going to meet because we were both going to be in Europe at the same time. We spent 3 months getting to know each other without physical contact. Now we knew we were going to meet, and as we started to get to know each other, we knew there was something really special there for us. We knew there was something that was drawing us together in more than just a platonic sense. But we got to really know each other, and we took advantage of that. Like we really got to know each other. We were asking each other a lot of questions. We played a game as I would ask her 5 questions. She would answer them, and I would answer the same 5 questions that I would ask. And the next day she would do the same. And so, 3 to 5 questions. And we really got to know each other. So during these times and dating, spend time getting to know someone. But let me be really clear. Masculine and feminine polarity, sexual dynamics, sexual attraction dynamics require physical presence.
Mm.
And so again, I wasn't and she wasn't attached to any outcome. Yes, we were meeting, yes, we were connecting, but we weren't attached to this has to work or we're going to be in partnership. It so happened that we found each other and we got married, but and we were together in that sense, but that we weren't attached to that.
Right.
Capacity. We're very open to, well, what if we meet each other and I don't like how you smell, or there's something that doesn't fit, because physiology is very, very important for us as human beings, human spiritual beings. So that was a big, big part of it too. Non-attachment, and we got creative. We got creative to get to know each other. Like I went deep. We were asking very deep, profound questions about wounding, history, traumas, fears, ambitions, desires, dreams. You name it. We pretty much covered it. Sexuality, family, values, like all of it. Belief systems. It's important. So I would say get creative, get to know people. If there's some trepidation in meeting people physically still, and you're entitled to your own fears or perspective, but remember, how long do you want to let those fears run you? Because 9 months ago that wasn't a consideration for most people, unless you had an obsessive compulsive disorder, unless you had germophobia, or unless you had a legitimate psychological condition or psychosomatic condition, right? That was not. Now so many people are very scared about physical contact.
That's true.
I heard Zach Bush say this. Do you know Dr. Zach Bush? Are you familiar with him?
No, I'm not.
So he's a super cool guy. I heard him say, like, I want to hug you. I want your DNA. I want the imprint of who you are into me. I want our microbiomes to blend, right? I want your spirituality to make contact with mine. I really like that. Mm-hmm. And I think there's something to be said for that.
Yes, I think we crave that as humans. And I think it's really beautiful how you describe your courtship of really getting to know each other in this really fun dance, and that's, I think, such the exciting part about the dating phase of things. But then I think also too, it's easy to have sort of a non-attachment in the beginning. And then sometimes, either one person or the other will want it to go further or have sort of like, where is this going type of mentality. And that can kind of, restrict things or, have a tendency to make it want to like take shape and form in some way, shape or form, instead of like surrendering and letting it evolve. What's your advice on kind of like letting that dance sort of play out?
Well, the reality is the only way that dance can play out is when both people feel whole in themselves, when they're not pursuing or chasing unconsciously and or consciously codependence. So they're not relying on the other person to make them feel a particular way, whether it's happy or sad or melancholic or joyful or ecstatic or whatever it may be. So we have to work on our own self-worth. That's really what it is. So two people have to come together. So 1 + 1 = 3, not half plus half equals 1 or 1 + 1 = 2. 1 + 1 = 3, 3 being the third entity, and these whole people come in. And so to feel whole, you have to have a heightened level of self-worth and self-esteem. And when you keep peeling that back, that's doing your shadow work. That's dealing with your fears. That's dealing with your patterns of your past that we spoke to a moment ago. That's dealing with the key relationships in your life. Like, do you have dense feelings, anger, sadness, resentment towards mum, dad, siblings, grandparents, whatever it may be? It's like really clearing the clutter of the past and not bringing that baggage into the current relationship dynamic, because that can be very painful. And also, really, you're not going to be able to dance then, because you're going to come from a desperate energy or a circular energy of fear. And I need this person, I need this relationship to work on. Your identity becomes wrapped up in that, and that becomes problematic, because now you're coming from a different energy. You're not light and carefree. You're not free. You're not experiencing freedom in the relationship, and that person feels that. And for example, if you're an insecure attachment style where you become very needy and desperate and you're codependent or you're a people pleaser, that may push on the complementary wounding of that partner as that begins to unravel, and they're avoidant, and maybe they crave their freedom. And they need, and the moment someone gets desperate or needy, or it starts getting into their energy. They're like, whoops, see you later. But that then just triggers you even further. And so you latch on more and that triggers them further. And all of a sudden there's no dance.
Yeah.
It's more of a tug of war.
It's so interesting to look at it from sort of a higher lens, and I think sometimes when you're caught up in it, it's like it just feels, it can feel consuming, right? But if we take a step back, like you said, we can sort of see it and see our stuff that we bring to relationships, and it can be sort of really fun to look at it from that way. What do you think about changing somebody in partnership? Do you think that's possible? Do you think we should even try?
It's a great question. Look, I think it's part of it is dependent on the circumstances. I don't think we should try and change or morph anyone into being who we want them to be. I think that's more of a reflection of where we're at, because then we're not coming from a place of acceptance, and we're coming into more of a place of judgment and critique. If that's occurring, if that's being projected outwards, chances are that the judgment and the critique is inwards a great deal. And I can definitely attest to that. I would project my judgments and my harshness onto so many people because I was judging myself so harshly. I had such high expectations, which are rigid and confined and myopic of myself. So I placed those on others. It was just, again, that parallel drawn, that habit, right? And so I don't think it's healthy to want to change people. I think people can change if they want. I think a leopard can change its spots once it becomes aware of that, if that makes sense. That saying, you can't teach an old dog new tricks, leopards don't change their spots. I disagree with that. And for most people, when we're in an unaware state, yeah, that's very true. It's very real. You just can't change if you can't see it. But you can change if you want to. Now, let's say you see something in your partner, some potential, something that they can't quite see. Forcing that onto them is not going to be healthy because they're going to feel offended. They're going to feel less than. They're going to maybe get agitated. They may withdraw. But if you simply live your life in accordance with your highest values and not point out, but demonstrate to them what's possible, they may follow suit. They may become inspired by that because they're inspired by you being you. But forcing our ideals and ideologies onto someone generally doesn't work very well because our nervous system is immediately going to fight or flight because we think we're being attacked and we either have to attack back or defend. And so we're not receiving the message of what's attempting to be expressed. So I think it's important that we don't try and change people, but rather we say, okay, what is it about this person that is reflecting something within me? And maybe it's telling me that they're not my people and our values don't align. Or maybe it's something that I can get to shift within me, but we've got to bring it within us first.
How important do you think love languages are in relationships?
Yeah, I think they're a tool. I think they're important. I mean, I don't know if I'd put them on a hierarchy of the most important thing, but they're definitely, it's definitely something that I use in our marriage. So acts of service is really important to Christine. Literally, I could put a tea towel, like a little towel that's on the bench and put it somewhere where it's meant to be. And that's the world for her. Literally, because it's just, they're important. They're a tool though. And like at any tool, they can be overused or underused. And so I think being cognizant of them can be very helpful depending on what stage of relationship you are. Remember, we fluctuate through different stages of relationship. We fluctuate in those, back and forth in those stages, or spiral through and circle back down or circle back up. So, yeah, love languages can be important. They can actually bond us, and they can. When you start speaking the language of how someone gives and receives love and receives affection and intimacy and so forth, it can cause far less conflict. We begin to move away from, criticism and stonewalling and that shutting down and pulling away and judgment and withdrawing our love. And when we start, because we feel seen, we feel heard, understood, appreciated, respected, accepted. These are fundamental human needs, particularly in relationships. So there's a lot of growth that can come from you moving from a place of not speaking each other's love or intimacy languages, into making an effort into doing that, because then you start evoking a sense of spaciousness in the other person. So if I'm in this place of acts of service, and again, my intention is to give, it's not to receive something. And again, nothing wrong with receiving, it's very important. But the more my intention is just the purity of that intention, that energetic signature is to, emotional, psychological signature is to give, then I'm creating spaciousness in my partner that helps her feel freedom within. where she doesn't feel restricted. She feels seen and heard and appreciated. She feels all of these things that are very, very important. And what then happens is from there, she moves into a place of, well, I can give to you now because I have so much spaciousness in my body. I have so much spaciousness in my own being. I can
Yeah.
freely give to you. And that's a beautiful thing.
That is, I've heard you talk about making a list of different attributes, that you wanted to call in when you were looking for a partnership, which I think is a beautiful practice. And I definitely did the same thing. And I think it's a great exercise because it just helps us to get clear on what we want. But I'm curious to ask you, what do you think are the most critical, or at least for you personally, critical values that you were looking for in a conscious relationship?
Yeah, it's a great question the way you reframed it, because it's different for everyone. It really is different for everyone. It's a very personal choice. And I'll say on that list, and I went through it as an experiment because I wanted to get very clear on the archetypical woman that I wanted in my life, like the archetype of woman that I wanted. And I wanted to get clear for me, because I didn't want to be in relationship and keep repeating old patterns. And so in the process of becoming clear, two things happened. One, I realized the type of people that I was dating and I was being in relationship with and where that was being attracted from. And two, I realized that I'm actually not attached to the list, which was very interesting in and of itself. But it helped me gain clarity on me being able to be the best version of myself, being really fucking real with what I wanted and who I was and what I could offer. Because I came from a place of dishonesty, a lot of cheating and infidelity, cheating myself, being dishonest with myself, a lot of false pretense, false bravado. I just wanted to remove those masks as best I could. So that process was really powerful. So for me, some of the most important things and attributes in relationship, the first for me is willingness. And that covers a lot of ground. Willingness to look at our past, willingness to break through our fears, willingness to work on and in the relationship, willingness to acknowledge one's place and one's responsibility. And that worked in every way, right? And it was more than just a 50-50 equality-based relationship. It was well beyond that. It was another key attribute was I wanted someone that wanted to make impact in the world together, because I believe that conscious relationship, sacred union is here to redefine how we see ourselves as human beings and help elevate us to the next level of consciousness. So I wanted someone that shared that mission and that vision, that we could serve and work together in the world. And of course, shared attributes around different values around family, around experiencing life in a particular way, what that looked like. But that deep willingness to explore new ways of being as well. Using sacred sexuality as a tool for growth and expansion. These are just important things to me.
Yes, I love those. I want to go back to something that you said, which was around dishonesty. I've been in relationships also in the past that had that element, certainly, and been sort of on the other side of the infidelity, and found it to be one of the greatest gifts of my own personal expansion. And, I do think for me personally, it's like, can I be more of myself in this relationship? Can I be, can I bring more of myself? Can I bring more honesty? I think is an important question to ask, right? And, when there is an issue, either in the past or present, around honesty and trust, is there anything that you would recommend for like repairing that so that you're able to have faith and trust and surrender in a relationship?
Yeah, so I work a lot with couples that have experienced the breaking of trust in relationship, whether it be through emotional infidelity or sexual, physical infidelity, or something around finances, or just something else in general, whatever it may be. And, repairing that can be very challenging because it generally brings up a lot of old shit. Because when people are hiding or being dishonest, it's because they feel so disconnected. They feel so much shame and guilt. And so again, I really want to advise that the individuals do their own inner work. They can still do it together as well, but do their own inner work. And and compassion and non-judgment is so important for self and for the other. And that's a practice. That's not an easy thing to do. Having that mediated, having support, out. So whether it's marriage counseling or coaching or spiritual teaching or going to immersive experiences together, but you both have to be willing. Because if you're not willing to look at that old stuff and actually willing to change and say, and take ownership and responsibility for the actions and the part that people play in that, then, you know, you can go to all the love retreats and sex retreats and tantra retreats and all of that you like. It's not going to do anything. It's not going to help. And so getting to the core and the root of that dishonesty, and what was the environment that caused that to seed and caused that to flourish. And that's very important. That's really, they're the foundations.
Yeah,
Creating safe space. Yeah. So we have to create a safe space for each other to explore what wasn't explored that caused the dishonesty. And that comes from compassion, non-judgment, and forgiveness. Now, the key is, though, forgiveness can only really transpire. Authentic forgiveness only transpires when we feel the unfelt feelings from the experiences that we had that we've left in the past. We don't have to relive the past, but we have to feel those stuck feelings and release them. So modalities such as breath work, psychosomatic work, sexual somatic work, these modalities that engage the body at a cellular level and a visceral level and release stuck trauma from the nervous system whilst addressing the cognitive issues and reframing the situation can be very helpful as individuals and together as well. It's how can the individuals overcome challenge together? Because when they do that, there's this sense of reprieve and accomplishment that's felt, but also this sense of intimacy that takes place because now we're moving through challenge together. We're not separate. Because most people just want to be a team. That's why they're together. They want to be a team with each other. They want those human needs that we spoke to earlier. And so creating a safe space can be very, very valuable in this.
When you are in a long-term partnership or a marriage, how important do you think it is to have a mindset of both parties feeling like we can work through any issue together?
Very, very important. And there comes a time where sometimes that season of relationship is over. And I would say most of the time relationships end prematurely. And prematurely, not in the sense that they should stay together, quote unquote, forever, but they just end prematurely. The lessons haven't been learned. Hence our divorce rates, hence our separation rates. Because those rich lessons that could be learned and the growth that we can have and the baggage that we can leave in the past often just remains with us because we exit that relationship too early. So it's really important to have a willingness that, yeah, we can work through anything. There's not always going to work that way, but can we approach that from a place of being amicable, being equitable, being open and curious, being loving, coming from compassion, but we have to be self-honoring. We have to set healthy boundaries with what our needs are as well.
Yeah, I really want to dive in and talk to you more about, relationships as a sacred union, as a tool for our growth and evolution. And, I also want to talk to you about sort of this concept between intimacy and desire. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Esther Perel's work. Yeah, and I think it's powerful as a concept, right? Because we get closer and closer, and yet in relationship, we still want to have that polarity, those dynamics. So what's your take on that?
Requires effort. It requires practice, attention, and effort. So we wear so many different hats when we're in relationship, particularly with the pressures of the modern world that we live in. Family, children, economics, travel, where do we live, where don't we live? We've placed so much reliance on one other person. And I'm not saying that monogamy is wrong in any capacity. And I can explain why I feel it can be a very healthy and an evolutionary tool for relationship growth at another level, actually. But what I'm saying is we've placed way, way too much responsibility on the other person. We're codependent with the notion of monogamy or the ideology of monogamy. We're codependent with our partners. And that puts a lot of pressure on people to perform. And so sexual polarity and attraction dwindles a little bit because there's no lightness, space, and fun to be had in the relationship. That's why it's important, as simple as this sounds, have date nights. Create space in your week, your month, whatever, to really intimately connect, to practice new things together, to engage in novelty. Novelty stimulates a particular hormonal response around the anticipatory hormone of dopamine, for example. So do new things together. have new challenging experiences together, cultivate intimacy, allow time separate from each other, create space and so forth. And so applying effort to sexuality is very, very important. Practice sacred sexuality arts such as carezza or semen retention or ejaculatory or orgasmic retention as well. There are so many different avenues one can explore, a couple can explore, that often we just get stuck in the mundane because it's familiar and familiarity feels safe to the brain. But ultimately, we have to apply effort to challenge ourselves.
Any tips for like quarantining and keeping that dynamic as well?
Yeah. So you mean if you're a couple or if you're a single?
Actually, both.
So if you're a couple, more than likely you're homeschooling if you've got children, more than likely, not necessarily. Now that's starting to open up a little more in the US, in different states. Or you're working from home. So you're spending more time together than you have before. So you've got to be really clear with agreements. Where are you both working from? Now you're having your own space to work out and train and exercise, because that's very important for you as well, to keep you healthy and keep you motivated and keep your physiological state in a healthy place. And are you making time to connect? Maybe twice a week, you're making sure that you have an hour lunch together. Or again, that date night, or you've got a babysitter coming in, or if you're in a close family group or a community that you live in and COVID isn't an issue for you, you've got people looking after your children or whatever it may be, right? If you're single or if you're together and you're living apart, it's really important that you get creative, have video nights together, see each other. I'm going to be really transparent with you. I'm not a fan of what's happening in the world, the way that this has been handled socioeconomically and socioculturally. I don't believe in isolation. I don't think we're not at a stage or experiencing an illness, a sickness, a virus, a disease, whatever, that we need to quarantine at the level that has been advised. So I'm really transparent about that. I don't have judgment towards people that do. That's completely cool or not cool, doesn't really matter what I think anyway. I have had a lot of judgment and anger around that because I've got my own wounding around freedom because my freedom was taken from me as a child. So I see how, this situation's amplified my stuff, and I've spent the last few months dealing with that, right? But, I get it's a little more difficult to meet people at some level, but at some level, what reality are you choosing to live into it as well? Mm-hmm. So go and date and see people, and you can go outdoors and be a few feet apart if it really concerns you, but that shouldn't stop you from completely meeting people. Now, that's important. It's important to be connecting at that level. So if you're individual, if you're single and you're dating, again, spend time getting to know each other. Spend a little time on the phone. Spend a little time doing video call. Maybe you're not so quick to rush in a physical date, not because of COVID, but because you're using this as a reason to actually get to know someone and define, is there a resonance here? Now, you're only going to really know that in physical person, but take some time. If you've got a habit of rushing in to a relationship or rushing into opening up your sexuality, maybe this is a great opportunity to just pull back a little bit and observe and get to know that person at a deeper level before you give your sexuality away. Nothing wrong with casual sex in any capacity. It's great. What's your intention behind it? Where's it coming from? So I think whatever's happening in our external environment, it gives us an opportunity to get to know a little more about what we want and who we are.
Yes, that's really great advice. I want to ask you about intimacy and, taking when we are in relationship, how to have those difficult conversations. I think for some people, there can be a tendency to really avoid it when there is something painful or uncomfortable to talk about. But I think the goal of conscious relationships is to be very transparent and to be able to open your heart and feel a safe container to be able to express. What advice do you have for really creating that type of dynamic? And do you have any examples of, styles of communication that's really effective in that way?
Yeah, sure. So if you're about to have a difficult conversation, whether it's an intimate romantic partnership or maybe with your boss or a colleague or a friend, we can do visualizations. So there's a couple of ways we can do this. We can just sit in silence and stillness, eyes closed, and visualizing how we would like the conversation to go. How would we like to show up? What do we really want to express? You can do that as many times as you want. And that can help prepare the nervous system and prepare you so you don't feel shocked, right? You can write this stuff out, write the points out, keep writing it out until you feel, okay, I feel really comfortable with this expression now. Write a letter to your partner and give that to them, and then ask to speak about that, and or ask them, hey, if you want to write a letter back, you can, and then we can speak about it. And it's not because you're running from the conversation, it's just that you're being more articulate and taking your time. You're not coming from a charged emotional place. If you're about to have a difficult conversation that's very charged, like there's anger there or deep sadness or betrayal, my suggestion is shift and move that anger first with someone else or by yourself. Go through emotional release techniques. Go through trauma release exercises before you go, do that with a coach or a therapist or someone that can take you through that. So you don't bring that very dense charge to that dynamic, because all they're going to hear and feel is that. And they're going to shut down and shut out, and they're going to go into fight or flight. And you're just going to go in circles. You're not going to accomplish anything. So it's like that rule, 80% preparation, 20% execution. Prepare more for these deeper, intimate conversations. And the more you practice, the more you're going to come from that grounded place. And that's what they're going to feel. Communication is 70, 75, 80% plus nonverbal. The inflection in my voice, the pitch, the tone, my body language, moving in, moving out, the pausing, how I'm speaking, the cadence, like all of that. And so, and also not just that, but the energy that's literally emanating from my body that we cannot see physically with our eyes, which are an extension of our brain. And there's science has demonstrated this, that we have this auric field of energy that carries a signature. So if our signature, our physiology is very tense and nervous, that's radiating out. People feel that. People feel that in the enderic nervous system, the ENS. That's how we receive information. One of the ways we receive information from the outside world, that sends it to the vagus nerve, that then communicates with the various parts of the brain. And if shit's about to get real, boom, the amygdala is activated, the pituitary gland, the adrenals, stress hormones being released. Like, this is a very real thing. Energy is a very real thing. Real meaning it's tangible and physical, but we can't see it in the way that I'm seeing this computer here. It's so appreciating that and taking the time to prepare for something that can feel really big, can direct the relationship in a very new way and heal old wounds as well, because now you're just not in a reactive old state.
I love that. Yeah, I think that's so, so powerful. And it's almost like visualizing where we want the outcome to go to, and not just like, how do I want to express how I'm feeling? But sometimes, it is getting caught up in that emotionality. So taking a step back can be such a powerful, helpful tool. What about sex in relationships? And, for example, if a partner wants to be intimate more than another partner, how do you suggest communicating about that?
So that's so challenging for so many people. Well, firstly, it's really important for that person that wants to have sex more or less to understand and connect to where does that come from. But really delve into it. And it could be a hormonal thing, could be a phase, could be a trauma thing, could be a preference thing, could be a habitual thing. Like, just get really clear on where that comes from. At the end of it, it's a I don't want to say negotiation, because I don't want to bring business terminology into sexuality per se, but it's not even a compromise. It's a discussion. It's an open conversation that may be ongoing, and there are many, many ways to dress this up. It may be that you both agree to have an open container, or you agree that your partner masturbates more, or you agree that I don't know. It's infinite choices. But having honest, open conversations about that, and not justifying why something's important to you or not. That's not what it's about, but just getting clear for yourself, because that may actually change your why or change your incessant need to have more or less sex, whatever it may be, right? But then having those open, continued discussions, and how important is it to you? Is it really a non-negotiable? And if it is a non-negotiable, what is that? What are you making that mean? Where's the direction that you can go? Because really the direction and the outcome, or the dynamic that you choose to share, can be infinite and ever changing. Like, it's not going to be fixed. It really won't.
Right.
That's important, knowing that. And we get stuck in the, it's not getting stuck in the present, it's getting stuck in an alternative future that is projected worst case scenario, and it disrupts our present. So for example, in this case, if there's someone that wants more sex and they're not getting it, and they've had a period of time where they're not getting that, what amplifies the present moment of that, one of the things, there are many, is this future projection of, I'm never going to have as much sex as I want. And it's like panic and shutdown. It's like, I'm going to fucking fix this now. I need to do this. I need to work this out now. And then it brings more intensity in that moment. So we need to relax the body, pause, long, slow breathing, get to the core of what's happening here. And it may be that this is a non-negotiable for you. And that's not wrong or right. And then you've got to make decisions about what that looks like for both of you. And again, there's many ways to do this. It could be breakup. It could be I'm going to have sex outside of this social monogamous union. And the other partner's going to be, I'm okay with that. Like, I'll give you an example. I have friends that have been married for 18 years, and she's going through and has been going through a season. They've had 3 children, a season where she is just really sexually shut down. Now, granted, she has some issues, so, you know, inner emotional stuff and psychological, but she's really sexually shut down. And my friend, he's still, after all this time, very sexually attracted to her and wants to have sex with her. And she said, look, I know this is not healthy for us and for you. This is where I'm at, like a lot of postpartum depression and so forth. And I give you permission to have sex with other people. Like she said, and he doesn't want to. Because and another man would have said, hey, cool. Or another partner would have said, okay, I can do that. But he genuinely doesn't want to. And she's genuinely giving him permission. It's not one of those manipulative resentment, like, oh yeah, do it, I'm testing you. I think there's a little bit of that there, but she genuinely wants him to be happy. And she's genuinely sad. And at the same time, she's not doing anything about, and neither is he at that level where they're doing something about that at a deeper level. And so the alternative that they have come up with is, well, you can have sex with other people. But that's not an alternative for him because he doesn't want that. So
You know, yeah. And that's such a great example of how complicated, you know, dynamics can be in relationships. And that's why relationships are our greatest teacher, right? Because it's like we get to navigate and work through all these complex layers. And so I think that is a really powerful example of, and to be able to communicate about the issues that aren't so easy, you know, and to be able to go beneath the surface. Do you have a thought, you know, let's take it back to, you know, the sacred union of relationships for our evolution. And maybe if you could just explain, you know, how you see that playing out, maybe in your life, in your evolution and growth.
Ask the question again, if you don't mind.
Yeah. So now that you are in a sacred union of a relationship, maybe, you know, illuminate some of the things that are different for you and how that's benefited you in terms of the work that you're doing in the world and in your expansion and growth.
Well, the intention to be in sacred union is first and foremost very powerful for me and very empowering, because I don't have this yearning to be dishonest, because I've done a lot of that work beforehand. I feel very safe in my relationship, where I don't mean like I'm in physical danger. I mean, I can speak to my wife about anything and everything. We have sometimes really dense and deep conversations, and we know that we're going to be here. This is it. We're sticking around. We're really, it's not, oh, this is a struggle, we're going to make it work. It's not at all. If that was perpetually happening, then we'd have to look at, you know, what are the patterns around that, and really what are we wanting to, why are we here? But I just, it's such an honest, open forum that we have with each other, that we're very, very safe to be however we need to be with each other. That opens up the potential to focus on giving and growth and receiving as well, because that can be very hard for people. That was very hard for me to receive love, like to really receive the magic of a woman, the magic of another person. I kept denying that and you know, repelling that. And so for me, this choice and this deeper work that I've done on my lonesome for a number of years, and lonesome is not the right word, in solitude, in my own space, has really laid a foundation where I can just be deeply, deeply honest and in integrity and curious in our relationship, and excited to be here. Like, really excited to be in this relationship and what the future holds for us and what the present moment holds for us. And we're very open to learning and growing from each other. We respect each other a great deal. I respect the what's the word I want to use? It's not skills or tools. It is all that, but it's just the essence of who she is as a woman and who she is to me. I really respect that. And I trust her. There's deep trust there. And there's trust there because we're committed to honesty. We really are.
You hit on so many key elements that I think are really beautiful in a sacred union. I think receiving is one of those things that
Mm.
can be really difficult for a lot of us. And getting really comfortable with that can really allow us to grow and expand in love. So thank you for sharing that. I want to ask you one more question, but first,
Mm.
Stefanos, where can people go to connect with you and learn more about the work that you're doing in the world?
Yeah, for sure. And thank you for asking. So grow with Steph, STEF, growwithsteph.com. You can find out a lot of information. There's a lot of free stuff there as well. You can take my love block assessment quiz. There's just some free courses there as well. You can apply to work with me in a one-on-one capacity. You can go to my main website, stefanosifandos.com, and on social media at Stefanos Sifandos.
Beautiful. We'll link to all of those in the show notes. And last question for you that I want to ask is around sort of this growth that we're experiencing, I think, in the divine feminine and the divine masculine. And so I know you do a lot around healing and bringing out healthy masculinity. So share with us, if you would, the 5 tactical virtues of being in a healthy masculine.
So the 4 tactical, there are 5. There's 5. I've added another one. Originally, the 4 tactical virtues are from an author, Jack Donovan, and I was reading that. I really resonated with it, and I thought, wow, this is great. So the 4 tactical virtues are strength, courage, mastery, and honor, and I've added connectivity there as well. And so essentially, we're talking about healthy masculinity. We're talking about what does it mean to be good at being a man, not what does it mean to be a good man. And so fundamentally, masculinity is about what does it mean to be good at being a man. And a lot of that is vested in our biology, in our ancestry, in our evolutionary psychology. So what were we responsible for? What did we do? How were we as men? So biologically and culturally, we extended the perimeter. We kept our communities safe. We hunted a great deal. We were in the wild. We were challenged deeply. We were in danger a great deal. And so so the way that we developed attraction and related to each other was through these modalities and these ways of being over many, many years. As humanoids over millions of years, as Homo sapien over 400 to 600,000 years, or maybe a little less, 350 to 500,000 years, somewhere there. And so it really understanding that. So strength, like our ability to be strong, it symbolizes discipline, courage. Let me scrap courage because we'll come back to that. But discipline, it represents accountability, represents focus and determination, carrying physical strength in our body, but also resilience. And strength and courage are very much intertwined. Courage and resilience to deal with difficult times, emotional challenges. Courage to face our fears, to want to change, to do what's best for ourselves and for others, to find that balance as consciousness has evolved, right? Because yes, there's a lot of evidence that I'm going on a slight tangent here, but I'm going to come back, that we're non-monogamous beings, and sexually we're non-monogamous, absolutely. And the advent of language, the complexity in our culture, in our cultural dynamics, the development of the prefrontal cortex, our ability to expand consciousness in a way that we haven't been able to before. All of this adds to how we see each other and how we relate. And that includes the 5 tactical virtues, right? And it includes how we relate sexually to each other and emotionally to each other as well. And so when we move, strength, courage, mastery, men were masters of whatever craft or skill they had. Their utility and their self-worth was predicated upon their usefulness, purposefulness, and contribution to the clan, to the tribe, to society, whether it's making weapons, whether it's extending the perimeter, whether it's creating a structure for physical protection. So we come from a place of mastery. It's important to have that, be active with our hands. It's embedded in our nervous systems. And then you've got honor. You're honored to contribute to society in a way that is beyond just yourself. It's for the community. It's for your family. It's for your brethren. And that's very important. And the connectivity piece, I think, is deeply important because we're relational beings. And being relational beings, we rely on each other. We need each other. We need to connect. We need to be intimate. We need to be in each other's physical proximity. And men have lost that. Men have, for many reasons, well before the Industrial Revolution, but I'll use that as an example. The Industrial Revolution tore us apart to some degree, created massive acceleration in innovation and technology, but it, the agricultural revolution, the industrial revolution, it began to separate families and separate men from community, because we went into work, we went into predicating our, this old utility, but we thought, oh, we're going to make more money, we're going to work more hours, we're going to be more distant from our family as a byproduct and from the things that we love. And we're so tired we can't connect. And I'm simplifying some things. I don't mean to be reductionistic. However, these and many more other elements have played a role in disconnecting man. So connectivity is really, really important.
Yeah, I love that you added connectivity, and it's been said that we're entering the era of relationships, which I think is so true. It's like this is the time to do that work. So I just want to applaud you and honor you for the beautiful work that you're doing, and also just sharing with us that epic love does exist and we don't have to settle, and there's such an ability to expand in sacred union and just relationally as well. So thank you so much, Stefanos, for joining us today.
Appreciate you having me. Thank you.